I'm Dr. Susan Eyrich, and welcome to this conservation conversation. These conversations are designed to contemplate our collective journey together and how best we can find and then maintain our individual paths. The ultimate goal is action arising from a shift in perception that all life is sacred, and creating a community of practice that grows and supports each other through our actions. We're delighted you're here. So hello, everybody. This is a difficult night here with weather and wind and snow. So we'll do the best we can. I can't see anybody. Hopefully you can see me. So first thing is to bear with us with the technical glitches. Anne is new at this, and she's going to mute everybody to start. And then once I finish speaking, you can unmute yourself, then join the conversation. And as you know, this will be recorded and posted on our website and available to you by Friday. One of the strongest threads of what's happening is, and we've known this for a long time, it's been here and there, but is really strong now, is the critical importance of the feminine. And by feminine, I don't mean only females. The feminine aspect of all of us, male and females. Einstein said, I abhor American education because knowledge is primary, not wisdom. And knowledge is masculine and wisdom is feminine. And we have knowledge but no wisdom. And how critical it is to have the feminine. And one of the aspects of the feminine is being receptive and listening and receiving information. And then from that wisdom, acting. One of the reasons I love these conversations is because it's among equals always, because all of us humans are equal and every single one of us has something profound to offer. Though we may not know it or have found it in ourselves, it doesn't mean it's not there. And this is an opportunity for each of us to support one another. And one of the reasons I'm saying that is because one of the things that we're just, of the powerful movements that are happening is the awareness of not just the essential qualities of community, but how important small local conversations are. Now, local could be an online conversation. The tremendous impact of conversations of like-minded people, 10, 12, 15, 20 people, intimate conversations where we can each begin to support one another. And these seem to be happening all around the world. Some of them are smaller, some of them are larger. I think I've spoken to you before about one conversation I joined called Reversing Extinction, where the whole point is for us to see, okay, we don't really know what it is we need to do. And for lack of a better word, whatever you want to call it, spirit, God, nature, something larger than us, that particular small conversation of about 20 people, is trying to really pray deeply to see what can we receive from whatever that larger wisdom is. What can we receive that we might be doing something differently? What answers? Because we're not succeeding yet. Fixing this and fixing that and fixing the other doesn't really succeed. What we really need to do is something very fundamental, which is change how we see things. And that can happen in small conversations. There's a book called Revisioning the Earth. There's another one called Reinventing the Human. These aren't books and conversations. There are conversations along the lines of not only reinvent the human, but our souls are growing. How do we live in awe and wonder? And coming alive and healing the planet. And coming alive, it's that old wisdom we have that you work on yourself first before you can really make external changes. But as with any real wisdom, the more you contemplate and think about it, the more you understand it, the more true it becomes, the more powerful it becomes, the more powerful we become, as we really understand that if we start to work on ourselves and work on ourselves with the support of a small community, that starts a whole energy shift that is actually enormously powerful. There's a course I'm taking with an online course. That's a model for one I want to do with Earthfire, done by a woman called Dina Metzger, and that's called 19 Ways to the Fifth World. And it's a really interesting book list, all of whom talk about how do we understand how our minds have been shaped so that we don't truly understand who we are and what we can do. There's this interesting work now on sacred economics, changing the whole entire idea of economics to be earth-centered. There are enormous movements. I just attended the TEDWomen conference, and they want to have small groups picking particular topics that can be sponsored by them and done around the world. I'm looking into, we might do some of those and have our own here also. But that particular point I'm making is there's another small group called the Sacred Earth Conversations. It's coming up all over the place, the sacred earth, the sacred economics, sacred, sacred, sacred. We're really beginning to make a shift. And without that fundamental shift, we don't have a chance. With it, we have a pretty good chance. Another way, so that's community, small community, how important that is. Another way of looking at it is the incredible awareness of what our human bodies are and how we don't tune into them enough. There's research that suggests our DNA actually functions as a receptor, a radio receptor from some kind of wisdom and blueprints larger than us. And we each have our own radio receptors, so we're each completely unique. And there's evidence supporting that type of thing where DNA is only part of the actual physical DNA. It doesn't work the way biologists thought it did. And then if you think about the fact that our body, our wonderful, incredible human body, is made up of 30 trillion human cells, each of which is a receptor. Each of those cells is a living entity working in humming harmony with the rest of us. So we have 30 trillion human cells, and 38 is the latest estimate, 38 trillion non-human cells in our body, all working together in harmony. What kind of wisdom would that be if when we begin to start to meditate and tune in, what kind of wisdom is accessible to us? And the idea that actually our five senses can also narrow us and must narrow us, so we'd be overwhelmed. But through various forms of meditation, we can begin to access this wisdom. And this wisdom, as Matthew Fox talks about, every single one of us is the end of 13.8 billion years of evolution. So there's this enormous wisdom. How do we tune to it is an important question. How do we invent? And it's not really reinventing who we are. I think it's rediscovering and becoming who we really are. And what that can do as we begin to come up with new solutions. So one practical thing is local community discussions, and they could be discussions on who are we as a human, or how do we do something specific in our community. And there go the wolves and the coyotes, so hopefully you can hear them. I don't know if I want to talk over them or not. They join us every time, somewhere around this time. Can you guys hear them?
They can unmute themselves.
If you can't hear them, then I'll talk over them.
We can hear
We
them.
can hear them.
Oh, good. Should I be quiet for a minute so you can enjoy them?
Yes.
Thank you, guys. So there's a communities part. There's the incredible awareness of our human consciousness that we have access to. I just did a podcast that I think is posted or will be posted quick soon with a Native American called Stan Rushworth. It's a very good podcast. He's profound. He's a Native American elder and a Vietnam War vet and tremendously wise. And the fundamental thing he talks about in terms of indigenous wisdom is the importance of right relationship. We must have right relationship to other living beings. And he talks about it in some detail. And so you might want to listen to that. So we have community, we have our own body as a receptor, we have right relationship to other living beings. Next podcast, which interview I'm going to do is with a woman called Renee Lertzman. And her specialty is taking our human capacity for denial as a very deep aspect of our psyche and how we can deal with it to deal with climate change. If anyone wants to, we'll send out the resources later at the end, as always, at the end of the conversation. Her website, it's Renee Lertzman, is very interesting. And she has several points she makes about why we're denying what's happening and how we can help ourselves overcome that hard wiring of wanting to deny so that we can access our incredible, truly incredible creativity to begin to deal with all the things we're facing. And all of these things, what's really primarily important is that we don't feel helpless. There's no point in feeling helpless because we don't even know if we're helpless or not. We know things are changing and they're not good, but we don't know what we can do. So the only thing that works is hope, and not blind hope. Hope in the resilience of life, hope in our own capacity to be creative. But again, another primary thing is that we change our view of what life is and our part in it. I'm going to read something also from Matthew Fox, as he had a lecture online, which I can send you the reference to if you also want to. He talks about how much we underestimate our creativity and the importance of finding a new story. I don't know if finding is the right word, and we all know what that means, but we're living a story of desperation. We're living a story of loss. Not that that's not all true and we have to deal with that, but a new story of how could it be on Earth? What if we started thinking very differently about the entire food cycle and taking from the Earth and giving back to the Earth? We picture a whole new story that changes everything because we start working within a framework that's positive towards something. And each of us has our own unique role to play in making that happen. And it does not have to seem like something huge and overwhelming. Matthew Fox is talking about the story we have now started with Descartes back in this, I don't remember exactly what year it was, 16 or 1700s, and the whole orientation of what developed since then was based on skepticism and doubt as the base. And he was saying, what would be the story if the base was awe and wonder, with which I totally agree. What kind of story would be living now? The incredible awe and wonder of everything that's around us. Every single living thing is a complete, total miracle. Renee Lertzman as a sociologist and psychologist who studied this full time, her own feeling is that each of us has the capacity for making the changes needed. And Matthew Fox talks about each of us has the capacity to find within us what we need, our particular gift that's going to meet our current times. I completely support all of that. And one other perspective I'm going to share with you. I should say, we don't have time for it today, that when I went to the TEDWomen conference, there were just incredible women and doing things around the world that would just blow your mind. The scale of it and the feminine approach of it were really very, very hopeful. But this is a small reading. There's one other perspective called Revisiting the Earth by Paul Devereaux. And he talks about a large strand of environmental awareness has settled into simplistic ideas of healing the earth and saving the planet, of our becoming stewards of the planet, and of the earth being fragile. But the earth, as some writers point out, is very tough indeed. In its billions of years of existence, it has withstood at least 30 major planetesimal, planet-wide impacts, each capable of wiping out more than half the life present at those times. Anything we can do to the planet is minor by comparison. Those who call the earth fragile, or who say that some human act will destroy all life on earth, are either ignorant of what the earth really is, or are using earth metaphorically as a synonym for humans. They equally dislike phrases such as spaceship Earth, as if we're passengers on some vehicle, and the Earth's role is merely a life support for us rather than being a whole system, a superorganism, indivisible between all its spheres, geosphere, hydrosphere, biosphere, magnetosphere. And he thinks we're full of hubris to entertain the dangerous illusion that we could be stewards of the Earth. We may ultimately come to destroy the particular type of planetary environment that sustains us and life as we know it. But if we were to disappear, Earth would have the ages that belong to her in which to restore herself before giving birth to other orders. Earth's song will go on whether we are part of it or not. So our concern for the environment can best be seen as an awareness that we need the way the Earth is in present state for our survival. It's our fate, not the fate of the planet in question. We have to save ourselves. We need stewardship for our own species. We should be looking to the earth to heal us. And that's the starting point for this particular book. If we are the disease, then the healing of that ill is the way to save the earth's environment as we need it to be. It's essential we not only continue, but redouble our efforts with practical activities. And those are things that we can each do when we feel overwhelmed about the more spiritual ones. Practical activities to ameliorate the symptoms of distress, such as recycling, using less, changing our manufacturing and transportation, and above all, pressing for constantly increasing ecological awareness on the part of our corporate, financial, and government institutions. But none of this effort will reach the critical mass to turn our situation around unless we heal our underlying sickness, our relationship with the planet, our world view, literally changing how we perceive the world around us. That requires the alteration of consciousness. Now I read this, but it is all over the place, this beginning awareness. And the positive, exciting part of it, it means it's an awakening of the human spirit, awakening of who we are, awakening of our potential, beginning to see things more clearly, not just with our five senses, not just what we've been taught culturally for the several hundred years, not just the standard vision of masculine or feminine. We have this incredible opportunity to begin to wake up and change things. In the midst of all this danger, we have this incredible opportunity, and every single one of us has a part in that. Just today, I read something that talked about the, I think it's BlackRock investment, the single largest investment firm in the world, has committed to only invest in things that are environmentally friendly, which is a huge blow to a lot of the destructive industries. That's on a large scale. On a small scale, one of the women from the TEDWomen conference has this mentorship program, which is just beautiful. It's matching one woman here, and some of you might be interested in this, and if so, let me know. Matching one woman who's got education and ability to connect with others with a woman in a village in the third world to mentor and support her. And some of the stories about what happens when you give one woman in one of those villages a little bit of hope, sort of a variation of the micro investing, only this is investing emotionally, a little bit of hope, a little bit of support in terms of what we know about how to develop whatever it is, be it septic systems or the food systems or the water or supporting other women. And that's been a really successful program. And how thrilling is that for one of us, you, Megan, or you, Katie, or you, Cindy, or you, Lynn, or Dawn, or Anne, or myself, to connect with a woman in Africa or the Middle East and give support. So there are all these wonderful levels at which we can operate. I've been talking for a while, so I think I'll stop now so that I can begin to listen to what you guys have to say. If you can, Anne, make sure everybody can unmute themselves when they're ready. So any thoughts from anybody? And there's a lot of things I said. So a silence is good while you digest it and take time to speak.
This is Cindy.
Hi, Cindy.
Hi. I've been, this is about thinking differently, I suppose. Really called into reading about how Indigenous people interacted with their landscape. There's a number of books between California and Australia in particular. Right now, I just finished a book called Dark Emu about Australia. And then there's also Tending the Wild about California, and seeing how differently some humans interacted with the environment, and that many Indigenous people did completely interact and tend the environment so that nature met human needs, human met nature's needs, and somewhere along that line, we were all Indigenous.
Mm.
You know, I'm a white European, so I'm a colonizer. And what I've really been here on my land and contemplating and actually talking to the trees about, I don't remember any of that, but I want to listen.
Mm.
There's a new relationship. We can't do that one. That relationship that was beautiful but historic, and then was destroyed by those of us who, our ancestors, those of us who are European. We can't recreate the past, but that wisdom still exists. The Indigenous people said that the ancestors taught them. Mm-hmm. And then, so we have, and all the ancestors, the trees' ancestors, the earth, the soil organism ancestors, our ancestors, all of that wisdom is there. It's just, you know, at this point, I don't know it, but it's there. It's there to wake up to. I feel it.
There's a wonderful book called Speaking with Trees by a woman called Beresford Kroeger. She has a little bit of a help in there about how she learns to listen to trees. And it's from ancient Celtic wisdom. That might be of some interest or help to you. But it sounds wonderful, Cindy, like you're on the brink, you know?
Yeah.
Of trying to listen.
Well, thank you for that, because my ancestry is Celtic. So, yeah, so that would be where my indigenous ancestors would have come from.
Her particular book was, she was an orphan, and therefore she was sent to the be taken care of by an entire village, many of whom were very elderly and had no one to pass their wisdom on to. And she was like the last to receive this kind of wisdom, and therefore felt obligated to share it with the world. And there's a beautiful book, and there's a beautiful film. And so I will make sure that when we'll send an email out to everybody with those references that you can see. And the film is free. It's meant to be shared. Of the power and the wisdom of the trees. And that's just one avenue, because as you're talking about, it's the air and the soil and our own ancestors, and the fact that we're all originally indigenous. So I don't want to take all the time up. I'd like to listen from the rest of you, or comments you have in response, Cindy. Katie, Lynn, Megan.
This is Katie.
Hi.
I had just kind of a thought about community. As we speak, and as we speak about trees, I think because I have found my own personal community to be in nature, and I have a very strong connection with trees. I don't necessarily hear their words, but I feel their emotions very deeply. And I feel very fortunate with that. So I'm very interested in that particular book that you just mentioned. And there's a video as well?
Yes, a video, a film that she made. It's an hour and a half of wonderfulness.
Oh, incredible. I've had just some amazing experiences with trees myself. And you know, so I'd be very interested in kind of evolving that, I guess. But that's why I go to the mountains as often as I possibly can, and I sit with the trees, and you know, I feel like I gain their wisdom if I don't even necessarily hear their words. So, but you know, also other forms of life as well. So. I've been working very hard at trying to create that communication with. I'm reading a book now called Talking with Nature, Michael Rhodes. And, you know, I read it and I'm going, yes, 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 that's it. So, you know, I'm very interested. This is a wonderful conversation, and I thank you. And I thank you for the resources.
My pleasure, totally. And you all give back. Lynn, Megan, and someone whose name I don't see, so I can't ask you. Anyone else yet? This may be helpful to both you, Katie and Cindy, and the others of you who are listening. In that talk by Matthew Fox, so he's for those of you who don't know, he's a very well loved and respected Catholic mentor. He's written many books. And he talks, that particular talk was, how can we connect with nature and listen to nature? For me, I'm always not just wanting to listen to nature for our own incredible richness, but given the times, the moral obligation that we have to listen to nature so that we can take its wisdom in order to start to make the changes needed to work in harmony with it. So for me, it's always a unit. And it's probably that way for all of you too. But he said something that was really interesting. He was talking about the creative process, and the creative process itself being ultimately of divine nature. And then when each of us is creating whatever it is, and that's where it comes to, each of us has within us to do what we need to meet these times, because we are in ourselves the result of intense creativity, whatever you want to consider it, whether it be God or nature, whatever. But the point is that when we are creating whatever, is when the divine and the human meet. In the process of creating, we're joining with the divine, wanting, what he called wanting, like W-O-N-E, becoming one with the divine. And as in the creative process, we're tuning to something larger than us. And I heard you, Katie, say that you're working really hard, which is wonderful, and I do the same. And also when you're working very hard, it can block the flow. So it's a very difficult balance there between working hard and then letting things flow. In the creative process, as we let things flow, we're connecting with a larger wisdom than us, wanting with it. And we begin to, and it could be anything. It could be working in the soil. It could be drawing. It could be breathing while we're walking in the woods. But when we go into that space, we're connecting, and from there we begin to get wisdom. And the wisdom isn't necessarily something specific like stopping plastics, though it may end up being that. But it comes from a much larger viewpoint, like stop making things that aren't natural, that the earth doesn't know how to take apart. Like all plastics that have ever been made are still on the earth because nature can't dispose of it. That so you can go from this divine, if you will, to something very practical. Like, okay, if you stop trying to make things that aren't natural, that stops a whole bunch of potential pollution. It's not the most beautiful poetic example, but I just love the idea that when we create, we're becoming one with the universe and the universe's force, and that answers will come to us, and not necessarily simple answers. We have to change our consciousness, and from the changed consciousness, the answers will come.
I did want to mention one of the things that all the talk about the trees brought up was, it's funny because Anne and I, of course, we both work there on property. And every once in a while we'll do writings, and Anne just wrote the most beautiful blog about some trees that she goes and visits, and just you should go and read it. It's on our website, but you can just feel how the trees do connect, and that there is that knowledge that's coming through. You might not know what it is, but every creature, everybody has something to teach us.
And the joy, it's not just teaching us, which is really essential in these times, but when we listen, they're appreciative. At last, someone's listening. So it's a two-way connection. And I think you had mentioned that, Cindy, it's a mutual caring back and forth. And that's what we're missing. If we're just trying to save the earth, we're not understanding the beautiful mutuality and connection back and forth with all life that supports and heals us. And I never know how these conversations will go. Suddenly we're talking about trees, which is just fine, because everything leads to everything else anyway, because it is all, I don't want to say interconnected because it's so overused, but for lack of a better word, it doesn't make much difference what the entry point is into our larger understanding. Did I see you wanted to say something, Katie?
Not necessarily. I'm just enjoying the conversation. I did have a wonderful experience when I was camping last fall, and I happened upon a tree stump, and I asked it permission if I could sit on it, and I felt such joy coming out of it. It was like, oh, somebody's acknowledged me, and someone is. It was really quite a lovely experience. So, you know, it is that interconnectedness or symbiosis or whatever you want to call it, but it's so strong in certain parts. You know, I find that very much when I go up into the mountains and spend time. And sometimes I have a harder time when I'm away from that particular scenario. You know, if I'm just in the house and going to work, and, you know, I hate it when I lose that touch, that feeling of connectedness with nature. And it's like, I can't wait to go back, because it gets almost addicting once you start getting those kind of connections. So, you know, I'm hunkered down for the winter and can't go up into the mountains the way I want to, but anyways, I love you know, that sometimes you just get such a vibrant response from a tree or a tree stump or a rock, or, you know, whatever it might be. Crows are particularly important with me. So, you know, just nature in general, I guess.
Thank you. That was an important comment, not a just by the side. One of the things I hope from these conversations is that we support one another in that experience you had was real. There's so much power and culture against it, that more and more, if we support one another, that begins the awakening and the changing of consciousness. And if a tree stump, another wonderful book, The Hidden Life of Trees, talks about how many tree stumps are still alive, by the way. And
I have it sitting right here.
and supported by other trees around them. But the whole idea that what if we lived in that kind of universe where actually everything loves being seen and appreciated? How would we treat everything then? And that's why I always say that spirituality is practical. Spirituality isn't the right word, but it's practical. Because if we have the, quote, spiritual experience like that, everything changes in terms of how we treat the world, and we wouldn't have any environmental issues, not human caused. So it's extremely important to support one another in these experiences. And who was it the other day? Someone was telling me, you know, if you just go into a supermarket and suggest to someone, as you're standing in line, look at that crow out there. Isn't that really a remarkable animal? You're adding a tiny bit of changing that person's orientation. Oh, I just thought it was a crow. I never even noticed it. So these conversations, supporting one another in this, are really important. And if you want to write that story, Katie, I'd be happy to post it on our website.
Oh, thank you.
I'll add it to Anne's beautiful blog. I think it complements it very nicely.
Thank you.
And that's true for you, Cindy and Megan, and anyone else who'd be interested in writing something or contributing however you'd like to, because it's a conversation. And it's a conversation not just between us, but ideally a conversation between us and all other life. I don't know if this is going to be helpful or not. It's not anywhere as beautiful as what you just said, Katie. But I was driving over the mountain pass the other day to get to an appointment. And it was wind and snow and blizzards. And it was very tense thinking about, I got to make it. I got to make it. Now, mind you, this was not a life or death appointment. It was important, but it was not life or death. And I was tense and worried and trying to get over this pass. And was I going to be late? And suddenly I looked at the snow and the exquisite flakes that were coming down and the tall, sentinel, dark pine trees with their load of snow and the peacefulness of it all. And then I was back again, worrying. And then I remembered to look at the snow again. And I was watching myself go back and forth between in effect, the craziness of the urgent, human, time-oriented appointment I had to make, and how that was making me all tense, and it's all the only thing that was in my consciousness. And then I'd switch back to, wait a minute, look at the beauty around you, and you will not die if you don't make this appointment. And back and forth, and I'm saying that because I think that's one of the ways we can exercise ourselves to begin to remember, to get out of not just with cultural stuff like time and appointments and stuff, but to switch our brain patterns from the busy, worried, totally human-focused one to the entirely different, more meditative one from which we both see the beauty, enjoy our lives more, have a better immune system, make better decisions. I mean, there's no good reason to stay in that worried, crazy, tense place. So I just offer that to you as an exercise I keep trying to do and keep trying to catch myself, where I'm not practicing what I really do not just believe, but have experienced the importance of staying in that place while you function in the human world, and how that hopefully makes difference in decisions.
That reminds me of just this last week, I was sent a link to the water song, the Algonquin water song that somebody sent. Anyway, somebody sent out. A second time I've seen it. This was about the Australian fires, and I could put a link in the chat if I can find it quickly. But it's a beautiful little video where they show us how to sing the song, and the women say, and particularly the saying that we need to actually sing to the water, that the water is conscious, that the water hears us.
I love that.
And so I've been doing that, humming it or going outside and singing to the snow, because the snow is water. I was walking in the snow yesterday, and it immediately takes me out of that head place. I got to get blah, 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 and into I'm singing to another entity, another consciousness, the water in my teacup, the water in my body. And that's just one element. So it's just a beautiful experience.
If you can't put it in the chat, just send it to us, and we'll put it in the summary with all the other references. We're going to send you the 3 references and the Stan Rushworth references and Anne's tree blog.
And I can certainly sing it if anybody wants to hear it.
Yes.
Okay, you can do that.
Very lovely way to end it. Go ahead.
All right. Nibi wabo and Diane Aki miskwi nibi wabo heya 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 hey heya 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 home.
That's lovely and soothing. It's almost like a lullaby.
That's how the grandmothers say to sing it. You sing it to the water like a lullaby.
Well, that's what you just did.
Yeah. And it totally changes our relationship.
Yeah. I think that feels like a place to, I don't want to use the word end this conversation, because hopefully it go on inside us and between us on all kinds of different levels. But it's a beautiful way to leave us all together. So does anyone else want to say anything before we end it? In that same
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. We'll meet again on the third Wednesday of every month, so that we'll have another conversation on February 19th. And I'll send out the references to everybody. And whatever you guys want to add to that richness for us to share with everyone else. And I thank you all for your participation and joining. It's been wonderful. Conservation Conversations are a production of the Earthfire Institute, a wildlife sanctuary and rehabilitation center whose mission is to change how people see and therefore treat wildlife and nature. Join us as we work toward becoming a committed and supportive community of all beings. Earthfire depends on your donations to continue these conversations. You can donate at our website, www.earthfireinstitute.org. The soundscapes are by Wild Sanctuary Presents, Bernie Krause and Philip Arberg. Thank you for listening. Please join us for these monthly conversations.